The president's announcement that Jerusalem would be recognized by the United States as the undisputed capital of Israel. How big a deal was that?
It's a huge deal because it's an acknowledgement of our history, of our rights, of our being here. You know, Jerusalem has been the capital of the Jewish people for 3,000 years, from the days of King David. For the last 70 years, it's been the capital of the state of Israel. Yet, many countries refuse to acknowledge that. And here comes the President of the United States, fulfilling the pledge that other presidents gave, and he gave in the election. But he did it. And he said, this is the truth. And it's not merely the facts and rights of Jewish history, it's the necessity of being based on reality when you come to make peace. You can't make peace on falsehoods. And the Palestinian Arabs have got to come to grips with the fact that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. Always has been, always will be.
Other presidents since the mid-90s, Clinton, Bush, Obama, all lived under a law that was passed unanimously by Congress back in the 90s. But they had this ability to extend. Were you somewhat doubtful that this president would pull the trigger and say, by gosh, we're going to do what the law says?
Actually, I believed all the time that he would do it because I know the strength of his leadership and his conviction. And on this, he gave a pledge. It's not merely a campaign pledge. It's something that coheres with history and with justice. And I think that the combination of all those things convinced me that he would do it. He asked me, does Israel want it? And I said, boy, do we want it. Of course we want it. For thousands of years, we want it. And I think that he did the right thing.
Were the people of Israel somewhat giving up on the notion that the U.S. would make this decision?
I didn't. It's a fact that Donald Trump did what other presidents promised to do but didn't do. He did do it. And I think that this is an indication that he's willing to go against the current. And I wouldn't discount the president when he says things like that, not only on Jerusalem, but also on Iran. You know, he pulled away from this horrible deal that will guarantee that Iran will have 100 nuclear bombs in a decade or so, or the ability to make them, unless this deal is stopped. And he said, okay, you either fix the deal or, I nix it. And people say, well, does he mean it? Yeah, it's like the Jerusalem thing. I think he means it.
Is there an increased optimism that you have and that Israelis have that this president will stand very strong to the Iranians and tell them no deal?
I have no doubt that he means what he says. Because Iran is the foremost terrorist regime in the world. To give them the weapon of ultimate terror, nuclear weapons that they could deliver with the ICBMs that they're building right to the American mainland, to Europe, everywhere, is folly. And the president, in his forthright way, says, I won't let that happen. And I think, contrary to what people think, I think the Europeans should consider the fact that he would do it and start talking to him about fixing the deal. I take him at his word.
You have been talking directly to the Iranian people in videos that have had incredible response. Do you sense the Iranian people, who've always been a wonderful people and a wonderful culture, that they're hearing your messages and responding to them?
Well, they are, and it's very gratifying. I mean, I put out this is the age of the internet, so I put out on the internet, I put 2-3 minute videos that speak directly to the Iranian people, and the response is amazing. I think some of them really risk their lives, but it shows you the level of frustration and subjugation over there when people are actually risking their lives to respond to the Prime Minister of the State of Israel from Iran. It tells you that the flame of freedom burns bright there, and that ultimately, as I always tell them, one day that regime will go, and the traditional friendship between the people of Israel and the people of Persia will be reestablished.
Previous administrations have echoed support for Israel, but the tone of this administration's partnership and alliance with Israel is very different. When Ambassador Nikki Haley made it very clear, America's going to take names. We're going to take note of who is standing with us in Israel. If the vote is 180 to 2, we're going to remember who didn't stand with us. What message is that sending, not so much to Israel, what does that send to the rest of the world?
There's been a game of hypocrisy for too long. I mean, you know, individual countries come to us. They want our technology, they want our, you know, our know-how, they want our help in security and intelligence and fighting terrorism, they want help in managing their water, getting more milk out of their cows, you name it. But there's some kind of charade. When they get to the UN, they get to UNESCO, to all these absurd forums where they made these absurd resolutions against truth and fact, against Israel. They somehow all collude in this charade. And here comes Donald Trump and Ambassador Haley, and they say, no, this is a game. We won't stand for it, you know. Stop playing this game of hypocrisy. And I like that very much. I think that's the, because I think that's the only way actually you build trust and peace. You have to do it based on reality. You know what they said the other day in the UN? They said, the problem in the Middle East isn't Israel. The problem in the Middle East is Iran. The problem in the Middle East is you know, radical Islamic terror, which sweeps across the region and threatens all the Arab countries, threatens Israel, threatens Europe, threatens America. It's time somebody said it like it is. This administration does.
When the announcement was made that the U.S. would recognize Jerusalem and eventually move our embassy here in a permanent way, predictions were that the entire Middle East would erupt and that all this pressure from Muslim countries would just explode. That has not happened. What is the message of that?
Many of the Arab countries, they no longer see Israel as their enemy, but as their vital ally in the battle against radical Islam that threatens them no less than it threatens us. But I'm telling you that there are many, many aspects to this new relationship, which I think bodes well for the future and actually gives hope for peace.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much. Great to see you. Appreciate your time. Happy New Year to you and the people of Israel.
Thank you to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. It's too often ignored in American media, but Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Jewish citizens of Israel are faithful allies to the United States. No matter what the headlines read or the pundits say, they will always have our back. Isn't it fitting that we have theirs?